affair with Swanson and chose to ignore it, or thought they had a business relationship only. Either way, she would have been partly correct. For Kennedy was milking the relationship for everything it was worth. Kennedy was Swanson's Svengali, and the affair ended only after Swanson discovered that all the lavish, expensive gifts that Kennedy had given her had been charged to her own accounts. Swanson produced small profits for Kennedy compared to what he would make when he sold FBO to David Sarnoff, head of NBC. A happy Kennedy walked away from that sale with a $5 million profit and repaid his outfit partners $1 million. His next Hollywood investment would be pursued with all the ruthlessness of a gangster. He had decided to buy a chain of theaters owned by Alexander Pantages, who controlled or owned a total of 72 theaters. The owner of such a chain could make enormous financial demands on producers who wanted their movies shown in his theaters. Kennedy was salivating at the prospect of owning the chain, but Pantages refused to sell. Kennedy then got his friends and business associates in the movie industry to withhold first-run releases from Pantages' Los Angeles theater. Instead, the movies were shown in other theaters. By the time the movies were available to Pantages, they had been seen by thousands in L.A. Yet Pantages still refused to sell. A desperate Kennedy sought the help of a shady theatrical agent named Dunayev, who lived with an aspiring actress named Eunice Pringle, who was ready to sell her charms for any opportunity to advance her career. Kennedy paid the pair $10,000 to set up Pantages. He also promised Pringle a part in a movie he was producing. Pringle gained an audience with Pantages by attempting to sell a screenplay by Dunayev. The screenplay was so awkwardly and amateurishly written that it was not worth the paper it had been typed on. Pantages rejected it and told Pringle that it was obviously the work of an untalented hack. Pringle was not finished with Pantages. On August 29, 1929, she hid in a closet of the Pantages Los Angeles theater. Dressed in a sexy, low-cut dress, she burst out as soon as Pantages was in proximity of the closet. She began screaming that Pantages had attempted to rape her. Startled employees called the police, and Pantages was arrested. At trial, Pantages was found guilty and sentenced to 50 years in prison. However, his attorney, Jerry Giesler, attorney for Bugsy Siegel and other gangsters and celebrities, appealed the case, and the California Supreme Court overturned the conviction, noting that a conspiracy had resulted in the conviction of Pantages. By the time he was acquitted in 1931, Pantages had sold his theaters to Kennedy for less than Kennedy had originally offered, though he still made millions of dollars. 2 years later, as Pringle lay dying from cyanide poisoning, she confessed to the conspiracy to set up Pantages. No one was ever investigated for her murder. Kennedy's trajectory was aimed at even more profitable enterprises. He had decided it was time for him to bid goodbye to Hollywood. Tinseltown's moguls were not the right kind of people for a social climber to associate with. They were uneducated Jews, and Kennedy was a snob and anti-Semite who referred to studio owners as pants pressers, kikes, and sheenies. He aspired to be accepted as part of the WASP establishment, not as a partner of vulgar nouveau riche movie magnates. It didn't matter that Kennedy may have been as greedy and ruthless as they were. He had worked assiduously to generate a polished image of himself as a highly successful man of the world. He was a gentleman. Yet Franklin Roosevelt correctly drew a bead on Kennedy's character when he appointed him as head of the Securities and Exchange Commission because, as Roosevelt said, it takes a thief to catch a thief. It wasn't until the outset of World War II, when Kennedy hobnobbed with pro-German lords and ladies in England, that his defeatism and anti-Semitism led to the perception that he was less a gentleman than an appeaser of a vicious dictator. After Kennedy repaid his loan to the outfit, the gangsters in Chicago realized there was more gold in the hills of Hollywood than they had previously realized. Though Al Capone had shown a tentative interest in the business of movie making, it was not until the end of Prohibition that the mob saw Hollywood as a new